Okay, buzzing through the diplomacy phase. Nobody wanted to take a real action here. One of the issues is people like England and France don't have a casus belli against anyone. So it kind of behooves them not to jump in unless they really need to. One thing I did notice, though, that war, the 30 Years' War, I had stated it was in the 5th turn last turn. It's not. It's in the 5th turn this turn. You got to count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how I miscounted before. Had some investments in some miners, though, with the English getting Scotland up into vassal, one of their goals. Spain picking the papacy back up. They ended up not spending anything on it because they're going to get the $50 back, although that ends, I think, in 1615. And the Dutch taking their Danish allies into a stronger position. These are helpful because they can call on them if need be for as allies. Say if the Spanish cut their way up too close, they can use them. Right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to make that call. There's no real harm to it, but it complicates things, and the Dutch are fine without it. Okay, some quick reflections after the economic phase. First of all, the French failed to establish anything in Quebec, but the English didn't challenge that location directly, but they did go into Quebec, which meant that there would be a potential competition over furs if they couldn't come to an agreement with regard to them. The English also have started up the coast of East Africa. They're way in advance of the Dutch in terms of colonization, trading posts, etc. And they're hoping to stay that way because they're kind of out of the conflicts in Europe, whereas the Dutch have this consistent problem of having to deal with that Spanish treasure fleet. They feel like if they can cut the fleet, stop it from reaching, Spain will be so starved they just can't go on. In fact, it may be the case anyway because Spain's got a penalty against them, I think, already for last turn. No, they managed to push themselves above the -3, I guess. So, how much Spain can gain? Well, right now, mainly Spain's just playing for those 5 victory points a turn that they're getting out of continuing this war. Is that worth it? I don't know. But they're hoping for some sort of resurgence. They declared war on the Incas. I see no prohibition against it. So they're going to go into there. Of course, they have to give it a peace if they can't resolve it within a couple of turns. Some of the other countries' real problems here. Russia, they managed to take out another loan, and they actually used their czar. Now this is something, I want to show you this chart because I haven't done this yet. It's a risky maneuver, basically. Now the Russians have a leader with a 9 military ability. That should be about your best military leaders. But in this game, unlike, say, Empires of the Middle Ages, having a high military doesn't mean that you're going to be a good leader. You end up rolling on this table here, and you can see even with the 9, there's some fairly low values. They ended up with a 2-1-2 leader, who isn't too much worse than what they've got, and a 1 siege value, which is kind of cool. But what it means now, they got this guy on the map. He's a leader. They've got to use him. The rules aren't clear on that, and I could see some people saying, oh, you can withdraw your monarch. Maybe at the end of a turn, but certainly the turn that you declare you're going to use him, you've got to use him throughout the turn. Otherwise, there's no risk to rolling one up, right? So it should be kind of a surprise there. Anyway, that's where we stand right now, and I guess we'll start this mess up. Okay, so we begin to see how the turn develops. Ah, crap, I forgot to get raw materials for the English. Alright. Well, a lot of the countries aren't doing much, like France didn't have to do anything at all this turn. But we're seeing the Swedes move down to besiege Thuringia. Wallenstein's ignoring them, but Karl is not really ignoring the Saxon Siege of Arts, we really have to worry about the possibility of being able to knock the Habsburgs out of the war with all those revolts. So for one thing, he tried to reduce the revolt, but he's also positioning himself where he can make an attack to try to break that siege. Because once they get in here, they can start taking the unrevolted provinces. It's sort of a dual issue right now, because the revolts are a problem, and the possibility of it being taken from them. On the other hand, they have a number of armies in place to try to handle situations. Russia, Bathory charged in against the weak Russian force and didn't get a roll. And basically, he didn't get a successful roll. And basically, the Russians caused some damage, didn't matter how much. Drove him out of there. No big deal in terms of attrition or whatever, but now the whole Russian army's gathered together. Astrakhan didn't want to move forward. Persian army largely destroyed. They didn't lose a battle. They pulled off map, and they're leaving things to the Turks to take what they can. They can't really do much. Over on perhaps one of the more important situations, well, there's a few important situations over here. Onate cleared that space for the Incas from the Incas again, and can move another space in. He got a really good conquistador roll, and ended up taking 10%, as well as eliminating 75% all initially, so the battle was not too risky for him. Barons managed to defeat and destroy Santa Cruz's navy. Santa Cruz is going back. He's going to try to slip that fleet through. That's the best he can do at this point, because he hasn't been able to chase Barons out. He's got to get that money through. It's not going to hurt him too much if the Dutch get the money. It will hurt him a lot if the Spanish have to go another turn without. They're already hawking things in the debt situation. The English, Cavendish, making another attempt, trying to make it to India this time. Started assessing some trading posts there. That'll be a really helpful thing for the English to really kind of establish themselves in the Far East well before the Dutch do. They're already getting close in terms of trading fleets, just because the Spaniards have been knocking off Dutch trading fleets with their privateer. I don't know if they have them on the board anymore. I think they let them expire. All right, onward. Well, probably the biggest news we had is why you shouldn't use your king in combat. Russian army was destroyed. Luckily for them, the king died in battle, which causes a 2-point stability loss. It also caused them to roll up a new king. In case for Russia it didn't work out too well, they got a much worse king. They got a dynastic crisis out of it. That's just not going to help things at all. But had it been captured, well, it would have meant they owed $200, no matter what country they are, to the Poles. And they don't have $200. They wouldn't be able to come up with $200. Therefore, that means it would be a bankruptcy. Bankruptcy's slightly more painful than what they went through. Of course, they'd have the same king, which was a pretty decent one. The Spaniards ran into another wall here at Cuzco. Onate was injured. He'll be coming back and able to act again. The Spanish gold fleet captured. The Dutch have the entire amount. And, well, we see Santa Cruz was sort of temporarily sacked for that. Nothing else too impressive here. The Turks are moving forward. Actions here in the 30 Years' War continuing as they were. Karl managed to drive off the Saxons. But for the most part, people have kind of a freedom to siege what they want. The Swedes are going to be a problem. They're going to have to be defeated as well. Well, I guess we continue. Okay, I guess we don't continue. At a round end, roll to 1. Alright, well, not a very impressive turn for most people. We've got some definite problems where sieges are going to be lifted here. Like, the Poles, they failed to get any of their sieges in place, which will make up for some of the gains they got. Maybe with a lucky roll, the Russians can get them out of this turn. And here we are at the end of turn 20, going into 21, 1590. Point-wise, we're really seeing Russia's hemorrhaging points. They lost 15 this turn. Now, they have this huge jump on everyone because of Portugal. But it's beginning to get worn away. And as you can see, Russia They offered up Smolensk. Poland didn't accept it. They needed an 8 or higher to give that away. Poland wants more. Poland wants absolute surrender, as it were. They have modifiers in the favor of Poland that keeps them from taking a piece. Now, that may seem historical and everything, but when it's integrated with the rules and the systems of this game, it makes things very, very harsh to handle a war with these miners. But what's worse is, look, I mean, Russia's going to end up surrendering. How many territories will they lose? Whatever. It's not the points now so much as the fact that they're being stripped of what they need to be able to be a great power someday. And they can't build their colonies. They can't expand into the east because they're getting trapped into these European situations that aren't working out well. They couldn't get rid of Astrakhan either, although they did, to be fair, go for a piece of level 1. They wanted that 10 extra bucks. Normally it would be 50 or something. Well, the reason they're looking at that is, well, they're not in that much danger from Astrakhan. They're giving points to Turkey, but they're not really losing anything, and their stability is pretty much flatlining at -3. They got bumped up because they got Turkey got bumped up because of a prosperity thing, but Russia's stuck down there. However, it depends on how you read the enforced peace, and I fluctuate on this. So one way of reading it is, hey, if you enter the peace phase at -3, that counts against you. That counts as a round that you're in trouble. But if you enter the negotiation step of it at -3, that's what counts. Well, quite often countries have enough money to keep pumping money in and keep their stability above -3. And, to fail 2 turns in a row is really unlikely. Spain's picked its first turn up now, but other countries are out of the way. Russia may be in trouble. I don't know. Anyway, it matters so little with the miners because they may just not accept it. But yeah, we're seeing patterns that I'm used to. Events happening too early. Too many of the events happening too early. That's a common pattern in the old event system, and it hasn't changed with this new one. Another one is the weakness of Russia. They've got too big a burden. The weakness of Turkey. Now, what we're seeing, the weakness of Spain, I feel like I must have screwed something up with them. Largely, the French, well, first of all, they didn't get their tercios technology when they were supposed to. And that meant the French could beat them in a war, and took Milan. Now, could the French have beaten them anyway? Yeah, maybe, but it's an unlikely circumstance. Usually the French walk away from the Italian wars with nothing. Anyway, live and learn or whatever. And here's another thing. The occurrence here. The Risto events make an effort to try to make it possible for Turkey to get Hungary. The old events made it very difficult for that to happen. But even so, I'm seeing the result from the old one. One thing to note, these revolts here, they don't cause a country. What they cause is a monarchy to fall. And that does not cause the country to surrender from my understanding now. Anyway, I guess this is going up.